Texas, a land of chilling legends and some of the most haunted locations in the United States. But behind the deserted roads and abandoned buildings lie untold stories, unsolved mysteries, and curses that no one dares to challenge. Today, we're diving into the 6 most cursed places in Texas, where spirits still roam, ghostly figures appear, and fear lurks in every shadow. From the haunted halls of Falkenstein Castle to the deathly curse of Black Hope Bridge, and even the Church of Shadows along Demon's Road. Each place holds terrifying tales that are not for the faint of heart. Are you ready to face these horrors? Join us as we uncover the most spine-chilling locations in the Lone Star State. Let's go to the first story. The haunted mystery of Falkenstein Castle. Nestled in the rolling hills of Burnet, Texas, stands the grand yet foreboding Falkenstein Castle. Built in the early 20th century, it was meant to be a testament to opulence and grandeur. Modeled after the European castles of old, its stone walls and towering spires loomed over the landscape, an architectural marvel designed to host the extravagant parties of Texas's high society. But time has not been kind to Falkenstein. The once vibrant castle now stands silent and abandoned, its halls filled not with music and laughter, but with a chilling stillness that seeps into the bones of any who dare to enter. Legends say the castle is haunted by spirits of the past, guests who came for the lavish celebrations but never left. They are believed to be trapped within its cold corridors, bound by unfinished business or tragic ends. Visitors who wander too far into the shadowy wings of the castle have reported strange noises echoing through the stone walls, soft whispers, disembodied laughter, and footsteps resonating from empty rooms. Some have even claimed to see phantom figures dressed in period clothing, silently watching from the windows, their eyes locked on the world outside as if yearning to escape their eternal prison. But the most famous spirit of Falkenstein Castle is said to be the lady in the white dress, a noblewoman who met a tragic end within these very walls. As the story goes, she discovered her husband's infidelity and, overcome with despair and betrayal, threw herself from the highest tower. Her death was swift, but her anguish lingered on, and now her restless spirit roams the castle halls, searching for peace she will never find. The photographer's encounter. It was a gloomy November evening when Michael Rayner, a seasoned photographer and avid ghost hunter, decided to visit Falkenstein Castle. He had heard the tales of haunting and wanted to capture evidence of the paranormal activity rumored to plague the abandoned estate. Armed with his camera and a notebook, he arrived at dusk, just as the last light of day faded behind the castle's silhouette. The moment he stepped through the heavy iron gates, a shiver ran down his spine. The castle loomed before him, its silhouette stark against the darkening sky. Michael hesitated, staring up at the ivy-covered walls and the shattered windows that seemed like hollow eyes staring back. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, his footsteps crunching on the gravel pathway as he made his way toward the grand entrance. Inside, the castle was shrouded in darkness. The once elegant chandeliers that hung from the ceiling were now covered in cobwebs, and the air was thick with the scent of dust and decay. Every step he took seemed to reverberate through the empty halls, as if the castle itself were alive, alert to his presence. Michael took out his camera and began to snap photos, methodically capturing every corner of the grand hall. As he raised the camera to take a shot of the grand staircase, he felt a sudden chill, as if a cold wind had swept through the room. He paused, lowering the camera slightly, and that's when he saw her. At the top of the staircase stood a woman dressed in a long white gown. Her figure was barely visible in the dim light, but her pale face stood out sharply against the gloom. She seemed almost translucent, her form wavering like smoke. Her eyes, dark and sorrowful, locked onto his. Michael's breath caught in his throat. He stared, frozen, as the woman began to move, slowly, almost gracefully, down the steps. He could see her more clearly now, long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her gown trailing behind her like a shadow. But something was wrong. Her expression was one of such deep sadness, her lips moving silently as if trying to speak, but no sound came. Before he could raise his camera, the figure vanished, dissipating like mist into the air. Heart pounding, Michael began to snap pictures frantically, his camera's shutter echoing through the silence. He spun around, hoping to catch another glimpse of the ghostly apparition, But there was nothing, just the empty staircase and the oppressive darkness pressing in around him. Shaking, he checked his camera. His hands trembled as he flipped through the photos. At first, there was nothing unusual, a dark hall, dusty furniture, the staircase empty. But then, in one shot, he saw it, a faint, shadowy silhouette at the top of the stairs, just where the woman had stood. And in the next frame, two glowing eyes stared back at him from the darkness, piercing and cold. He swallowed hard, his mouth dry. The legends were true. The lady in the white dress was real. And she was watching him. The descent into madness. Determined to capture more evidence, Michael ventured deeper into the castle. He moved through the deserted ballroom, where the grand piano sat silent and untouched, its keys covered in a layer of dust. He entered the dining hall, where long tables lay broken and scattered, the remnants of a grand feast long forgotten. As he explored, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Shadows seemed to move at the corners of his vision, and the temperature dropped with every step. When he reached the east wing, the air was so cold that his breath came out in visible puffs. He rounded a corner, and there, standing at the end of a narrow corridor, was the woman again. But this time, she was closer, close enough for him to see the anguish etched into her features, the despair in her dark eyes. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. For a moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she lifted a hand and pointed past him, back toward the grand hall. Michael turned, following her gaze, but saw only the empty room behind him. When he looked back, she was gone. The horrifying truth, his pulse racing. Michael hurried back to the grand hall. His footsteps echoed loudly, but then, they were joined by another sound, the soft click of heels on the marble floor. He spun around, and there she was again, closer than ever. But now, she was not alone. Behind her, more shadowy figures emerged from the darkness. They wore old-fashioned suits and gowns, their faces pale and blurred, as if seen through frosted glass. There were at least 10 of them, maybe more, standing silently, watching him. Michael's breath quickened. Panic surged through him. He lifted his camera and took a step back. Click, click. He snapped photo after photo, desperate to capture the sight before him. But the figures began to move, gliding toward him in eerie silence. He stumbled back, heart pounding wildly. "No, stay back," he shouted. But the figures didn't stop. They moved in unison, closing the distance between them with unnatural speed. Michael turned and ran. He raced through the dark halls, the sound of ghostly footsteps echoing behind him. He didn't dare look back, his mind filled with images of those blank, ghostly faces and the woman's sorrowful eyes. He burst through the entrance and out into the night, gasping for breath. The castle loomed behind him, dark and silent once more. He glanced back, and for a fleeting moment, he saw them, the figures standing at the windows, staring out at him with glowing eyes. The curse of Falkenstein. Michael never returned to Falkenstein Castle. The photos he took that night were shared among the ghost hunting community, but many dismissed them as tricks of the light. However, those who looked closely saw the truth, the hollow eyes of spirits trapped within stone walls, their faces twisted in eternal torment. Falkenstein Castle still stands, a monument to the tragedies of the past, and those who dare to enter may find themselves joining the lady in the white dress and her spectral companions, forever bound to the castle's cursed halls. If you ever visit Falkenstein, beware of the shadows, for they are not just shadows. They are watching, and waiting, and they never, ever leave. Next we start the second story. The haunting of Black Hope Bridge. In the quiet suburbs of Houston, Texas, lies an old, dilapidated bridge known as Black Hope Bridge. With its rusting iron beams and cracked pavement, the bridge stands as a chilling reminder of the dark history it harbors. Local legend whispers of a horrific tale involving a couple who met a tragic end beneath its arches decades ago. Many believe their restless spirits still haunt the area, forever searching for justice for their untimely demise. For those brave enough to visit the bridge at night, the atmosphere is heavy with dread. Reports of cold spots and eerie sensations fill the air, and some claim to hear faint whispers drifting up from beneath the bridge. Shadows flicker in the corners of one's vision, and more than a few have claimed to catch glimpses of a man and woman standing silently in the dark, seemingly waiting for something, or someone. A group of friends. One fateful evening, a group of friends decided to test the local folklore. Mark, Sarah, Jake, and Emily were thrill seekers, always eager for a new adventure. After hearing stories about Black Hope Bridge, they decided to drive out there at midnight to see if the tales of the ghostly couple were true. Armed with flashlights and a video camera, they set off, laughing and joking, but beneath the laughter lay an undercurrent of tension. As they approached the bridge, their headlights illuminated the dilapidated structure, casting long shadows that danced on the ground. The air felt thick with anticipation as they parked their car and stepped out into the cold night. A brisk wind swept through, sending shivers down their spines as they walked toward the center of the bridge. The moonlight illuminated the crumbling concrete and rusted metal, and the sound of the water flowing beneath was oddly calming amidst the tension. They gathered at the bridge's center, listening intently to the sounds of the night, the chorus of cicadas mixing with their nervous laughter. An ominous encounter. Suddenly, Jake's flashlight flickered, drawing their attention. He pointed it towards the edge of the bridge, where he thought he saw movement. "Did you see that?" he whispered, his voice shaky. Everyone turned to look. A shadow appeared beneath the bridge, tall and dark. It seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. It resembled a man standing motionless, gazing up at them with a chilling intensity. The group held their breath, their hearts racing as they trained the flashlight on the shadow. Just as the beam of light hit the figure, it vanished into thin air, leaving behind an eerie silence. A cold chill washed over them. But before anyone could speak, a sudden, ghostly laughter echoed from behind them. They turned around in shock, their eyes wide with terror. Standing in the center of the bridge was a woman with long, flowing black hair that danced in the wind. Her skin was pale as moonlight, and her eyes, hollow and empty, seemed to pierce through the darkness. The sight was enough to freeze them in place, their instincts screaming at them to run. The frightening escape. Without thinking, the group bolted back to their car, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They scrambled into the vehicle, slamming the doors shut as if that would shield them from the horror outside. As Mark fumbled with the keys, the laughter of the woman echoed around them, twisting in the night air. "Drive, drive," Sarah urged, her voice trembling. Mark finally started the engine, and as they sped away, the last thing they heard was a soft whisper carried by the wind, "Don't come back here again." The tension in the car was palpable as they raced down the darkened road, the haunting laughter still echoing in their minds. They could hardly speak, each lost in their own thoughts, replaying the encounter over and over. It wasn't until they reached a gas station, the bright lights and bustling activity reassuring, that they finally felt safe enough to breathe. A legend revealed. Once inside, they gathered around a table, still shaken but eager to process what had happened. They recounted every detail, their voices barely above whispers as they shared their frightful experience. An older gentleman overheard their conversation and approached their table, a knowing smile on his face. "You saw her, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. The friends exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to respond. "That's the spirit of the woman from the legend," he continued. "She and her husband were killed right beneath that bridge many years ago. Some say they were the victims of a jealous lover, while others believe it was a robbery gone wrong. Either way, they never got the justice they deserved, and their spirits are said to wander the area, looking for closure." The old man leaned in closer, his eyes glinting with a mix of intrigue and caution. "You're not the first to encounter her. Many who dare to visit the bridge at night have felt her presence. It's said that if you listen closely, you can hear her crying for help or see her standing in the shadows, waiting." The return. With their hearts racing, the group knew they had to confront their fears. They made a pact to return to Black Hope Bridge, armed with the knowledge of its tragic history. They felt a sense of responsibility to uncover the truth behind the spirits and perhaps help them find peace. The following weekend, they returned to the bridge. This time during the day, the sunlight painted a stark contrast to their previous experience, illuminating the worn structure and the flowing water below. As they explored the area, they stumbled upon a weathered plaque that detailed the tragic events that took place there, including the couple's names, Robert and Anne. Feeling a mix of sorrow and determination, they set up their camera, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they prepared for another night at the bridge. They recalled the stories they had heard, and as darkness enveloped them, they felt a wave of emotion wash over the group. A night of revelation. As the night deepened, they found themselves standing in the same spot as before. The air grew colder, and the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. The shadows loomed large, and as they waited in silence, a familiar chill crept down their spines. Suddenly, Jake felt an unusual tug on his sleeve. He turned to see a soft glow emerging from beneath the bridge. Heart-pounding, he pointed his flashlight in that direction. To their astonishment, the glow began to take shape. The ethereal figures of Robert and Anne appeared. Their faces a mixture of sorrow and hope. "Help us," the figures whispered, their voices intertwining with the wind. "We seek justice, we cannot rest." The friends stood in awe, understanding that they were witnessing a moment far beyond their expectations. Driven by compassion, they vowed to help the spirits find closure. They began researching the couple's tragic story, digging through old records and speaking with locals to piece together the events of that fateful night. Bringing peace, weeks passed as they gathered information, learning about the suspects and the circumstances surrounding the couple's deaths. They uncovered a suspect who had escaped justice, a man who had lived in the area at the time but had never been prosecuted. With this newfound information, they contacted the local authorities, who agreed to reopen the case. The day came when the friends gathered at Black Hope Bridge once more, this time with a sense of purpose. As they stood at the center, they felt the presence of Robert and Anne nearby, their spirits watching, hopeful for the resolution they had long awaited. When the authorities arrived and began their investigation, the friends felt a wave of relief wash over them. They had faced their fears and committed to bringing justice to the couple who had suffered so long. A new dawn. The case was eventually solved, and the guilty party brought to justice. As news spread throughout the community, there was a sense of closure, not just for Robert and Anne's family, but also for the spirits lingering at Black Hope Bridge. On a peaceful night, under a blanket of stars, the friends returned to the bridge once more. They stood together, feeling the weight of history lift as they whispered their thanks to the spirits who had guided them on this journey. As the cool breeze blew through the night air, they felt a warmth surround them, a sign that Robert and Anne were finally at peace. The haunting presence that once filled the bridge with dread had transformed into a sense of tranquility. Black Hope Bridge would always carry the stories of its past, but now it stood as a monument not just to tragedy, but also to the power of compassion and the importance of seeking justice. And as long as the stories were told, the spirits would forever be honored and remembered. Continue to the third story. The ghosts of the Paramount Theater. Nestled in the heart of Austin, Texas, the Paramount Theater stands as a testament to a bygone era of glamour and artistry. Since its grand opening in 1915, this historic venue has been a cultural hub, hosting countless performances, film screenings, and significant events. Yet, behind its stunning facade and the dazzling lights of its stage lies a darker narrative, one filled with tales of restless spirits who refuse to leave. From the moment you step inside, the air is thick with the whispers of history. The lobby is adorned with vintage posters and ornate decor, a reminder of the theater's rich past. However, patrons and staff alike have reported unsettling paranormal experiences over the years. There are accounts of footsteps echoing in the empty balconies, shadows flitting past the corner of one's eye, and a chilling sensation of being watched from the darkened corners of the auditorium. The most famous spirit of the Paramount is that of a beloved actor, Richard DeLuca, who tragically passed away during a performance in the early 1930s. Legend has it that he collapsed on stage mid-monologue, his passion for the craft extinguished in an instant. Yet, his spirit, it is said, refused to leave the stage he had graced for so many years. Instead, he continues to act out in the ethereal realm, lingering in the theater as if waiting for the spotlight to shine upon him once more. A night of performance. One fateful night, during the rehearsal for a highly anticipated production, an actor named Jake Matthews found himself alone on the vast, empty stage. The theater had a life of its own, the silence both eerie and electrifying. As he stood under the dim light, running his lines, the atmosphere shifted, the overhead lights began to flicker, and a sudden chill swept through the room, sending shivers down his spine. Feeling a strange presence, Jake turned around, his heart pounding. To his astonishment, he spotted a shadowy figure at the edge of the audience, its outline barely discernible against the velvet seats. The figure wore an old-fashioned costume, reminiscent of the 1920s, and seemed to be gazing directly at him. Convinced it was a fellow cast member playing a prank, he approached, ready to confront whoever was hiding in the dark. But as he drew closer, the figure began to fade, dissolving into the shadows as if it had never been there. Bewildered, Jake shook his head, brushing off the strange occurrence as a figment of his imagination. Yet, in the following nights, he would see that same apparition again and again, sometimes lurking in the wings, other times seated quietly in the front row, always watching with an intensity that sent chills down his spine. The haunting presence. As rehearsals continued, Jake became increasingly aware of the ghostly presence. The other cast members started to notice, too. Whispers of Richard DeLuca's spirit began circulating backstage, and the once jovial atmosphere turned tense. Some actors claimed they could feel the weight of his gaze upon them, urging them to give their best performance. One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, Jake found himself alone in the green room, poring over his lines. The room was filled with the faint scent of makeup and the musty odor of old costumes. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. A soft, ethereal laughter echoed through the room, and Jake spun around, half expecting to see one of his friends playing a prank. Instead, he was met with nothing but silence. Determined to confront his fear, Jake decided to research the theater's history and the mysterious death of Richard DeLuca. He discovered that the actor was not only talented but deeply passionate about his craft. The more Jake learned about Richard's life, the more he felt a connection to the ghost. Perhaps the spirit was not merely haunting the theater, perhaps it was watching over them. A guardian of the art form he cherished. A connection across time. During the late-night rehearsal, Jake found himself alone once more. The rest of the cast had left for the night, and the theater was dimly lit, shadows dancing along the walls. As he stepped onto the stage, he felt an overwhelming urge to perform, as if the very essence of the theater called to him. He began to recite his lines, pouring his heart into the performance. Suddenly, the lights flickered to life, illuminating the stage in a warm glow. Jake felt an electric charge in the air, and for the first time, he sensed that he was not alone. As he delivered his monologue, he could almost feel Richard's presence beside him, guiding him through the words. When he finished, silence enveloped the room. Then, from the back of the auditorium, a soft applause erupted. Heart racing, Jake turned to see the shadowy figure of Richard DeLuca standing in the aisle. Clapping slowly, a proud smile etched on his ghostly face. For a fleeting moment, the boundaries of time blurred, and Jake felt a connection that transcended life and death. A new understanding. After that night, Jake approached his performances with newfound vigor and respect for the craft. He shared his experience with the rest of the cast, and together they began to embrace the presence of Richard, treating him as an honorary member of their troupe. They left a chair in the front row for him during every performance, a symbol of their acknowledgement of his passion for theater. As word spread about the ghostly actor watching over the performances, the theater flourished, audiences were captivated, and ticket sales soared. Many claimed that they could feel the spirit of Richard in the air, encouraging the actors and adding a layer of magic to every show. The Paramount Theater continued to host spectacular performances, with its rich history and ghostly legends drawing in crowds from near and far. And for every actor who stepped onto the stage, the memory of Richard DeLuca lingered, a reminder that the love for performing arts transcends even the boundaries of life. An ongoing legacy. Today, the Paramount Theater remains an iconic landmark in Austin, a place where the past and present intertwine. Visitors report seeing shadows flickering on stage, hearing the faint sound of applause when no one is there, and feeling a warm presence during performances. The legend of Richard DeLuca lives on, not only as a ghost but as a symbol of the enduring spirit of artistry and passion. And so, the old theater stands proud, a beacon of creativity and history, where the ghosts of the past remind us that art is eternal. As long as the curtains rise and the lights shine, Richard DeLuca will remain a devoted audience member, forever watching over the stage he loved so dearly. Continue to Story 4. The Curse of Palo Duro Canyon. Nestled near Amarillo, Texas, Palo Duro Canyon is celebrated for its breathtaking landscapes, characterized by dramatic rock formations and vibrant colors. Dubbed the Grand Canyon of Texas, it attracts tourists and nature lovers alike. However, beneath its stunning beauty lies a dark and bloody history, echoing with tales of violence and loss. This canyon was the site of one of the most brutal battles between the United States Army and the Native American Comanche tribe in the 19th century. The fierce conflict left hundreds of Comanche dead or captured, and many believe that the spirits of the fallen warriors continue to haunt the canyon, forever tied to the land that witnessed their people's demise. The unsettling legend, as the sun dips below the horizon and twilight envelops the canyon. Visitors have reported strange occurrences, phantom hoofbeats echoing in the stillness, anguished cries reverberating off the canyon walls. Some have even claimed to see the ghostly figures of Comanche warriors riding through the trails, their outlines barely visible against the darkening sky, as if they were in a never-ending pursuit of an unseen enemy. One summer evening, a group of hunters, Mark, Jason, and Tara, decided to camp in the heart of the canyon. Undeterred by the eerie stories told by the locals, adventurers at heart, they were eager to experience the great outdoors. Armed with their camping gear and an enthusiasm for the unknown, as they set up their campsite under the stars, the air was filled with the sounds of nature, the rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and the faint trickle of the river nearby. As night fell, they gathered around the campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. The flickering flames danced in the darkness, casting shadows that leapt across the canyon walls. As they laughed and joked, the chill of the night crept in, bringing with it a sense of foreboding that hung heavy in the air. The haunting presence. Suddenly, as the fire began to die down, the trio heard a distant sound, faint but growing louder. It was a rhythmic pounding, the unmistakable sound of hooves thundering against the earth. Mark dismissed it as nothing more than a herd of deer, but Tara felt a shiver run down her spine. Maybe we should check it out, she suggested, curiosity getting the better of her. Reluctantly, the others agreed. Armed with flashlights, they ventured toward the sound, leaving the safety of their fire behind. As they walked deeper into the darkness, the pounding grew louder, echoing through the canyon like a haunting heartbeat. The atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension filling the air. Without warning, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night, freezing them in their tracks. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, bouncing off the canyon walls and filling their hearts with dread. What was that? Jason stammered, his bravado faltering. They quickly turned back toward the camp, their instincts screaming at them to flee. But before they could reach safety, the sound of hoofbeats erupted once more, louder and closer. Panic surged through them as they turned their flashlights toward the noise. A terrifying encounter. What they saw sent chills down their spines. Emerging from the shadows were figures draped in traditional Comanche battle attire, riding majestic horses that seemed to glide effortlessly over the rocky terrain. Their faces were contorted with rage, eyes glowing like embers in the night. The air crackled with tension as the hunters stood paralyzed, staring at the spectral warriors. Mark, unable to comprehend the sight before him, shouted, "We mean no harm." His voice trembled, barely rising above the pounding of their hearts. But the figures charged forward, a ghostly stampede bearing down on them. Just as suddenly as they had appeared, the warriors vanished into the darkness, leaving behind an eerie silence that enveloped the canyon. The trio stood there, breathless and wide-eyed, the reality of what they had witnessed crashing down on them. Tara's hands trembled as she whispered, "Did we just see ghosts? Let's get out of here," Jason urged, adrenaline propelling them into action. They raced back to their campsite, scrambling to gather their belongings. But the weight of the experience bore down on them like a heavy fog. A haunting revelation. As they hurriedly packed, a sense of unease settled over them. It felt as though eyes were watching from the shadows, and the whisper of the wind seemed to carry the voices of the long-dead warriors. Once they were back in the safety of their vehicle, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. As they drove away from the canyon, the sense of dread clung to them like a shadow. The haunting cries and the vision of the ghostly warriors lingered in their minds, a reminder of the night's terror. Unable to forget what had transpired, they began to search for answers about the legends of Palo Duro Canyon. In the days that followed, they dove into research, seeking out local historians and folklore experts. They learned about the brutal history of the Comanche tribe and the tragic losses suffered during the conflicts with the U.S. Army. Each story they uncovered added depth to the chilling experience they had shared. The Call of the Canyon, driven by a desire to honor the fallen warriors and find closure for their restless spirits. Mark, Tara, and Jason decided to return to the canyon. This time, they aimed to conduct a proper investigation, equipped with recording devices and a spirit box to communicate with any lingering souls. Under the light of a full moon, they returned to Palo Duro Canyon, their hearts racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As they set up their equipment, the atmosphere felt charged, as if the canyon itself was alive and aware of their presence. They gathered around the same spot where they had encountered the spirits before. With a deep breath, Mark spoke into the darkness. "We come in peace. If you are here, we wish to hear your story." The silence that followed was deafening, but the air felt electric with anticipation. After several minutes, the spirit box crackled to life, and a distorted voice echoed through the device. "Justice must be found," it whispered, sending chills down their spines. Seeking resolution. As the night wore on, they continued to ask questions, hoping to uncover the truth behind the warriors' spirits. They listened intently, and each response brought them closer to understanding the pain and suffering that had occurred in the canyon. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted once more. The temperature dropped dramatically, and the figures of the Comanche warriors appeared before them, their faces now filled with sorrow rather than rage. They stood in a solemn line, watching the group with intense, pleading eyes. "We need justice," a voice echoed through the air, resonating deep within their souls. "We were wronged." Tara's heart ached for the spirits. "We will help you find justice," she promised, feeling an overwhelming sense of purpose. "We will tell your story. A journey of healing." With their commitment to honor the memory of the warriors, the group set out to bring attention to the history of the Comanche people and the injustices they had faced. They shared their findings with local authorities, organized community events, and reached out to Native American organizations to raise awareness about the significance of the land. As they worked to share the truth, a sense of peace began to settle over Palo Duro Canyon. Visitors who came to the area reported feeling a warm presence, as if the spirits were grateful for the recognition of their sacrifices. The stories of the Comanche warriors became part of the canyon's lore, woven into the fabric of the community. On a clear night, as the stars twinkled above, the trio returned to the canyon one last time. Standing at the edge, they felt the spirits of Robert and Anne beside them, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves as if the canyon itself was whispering its thanks. The legacy of Palo Duro. From that day on, Palo Duro Canyon transformed. It became not only a beautiful natural wonder but also a sacred space honoring the history and legacy of the Comanche tribe. The tales of bravery, loss, and redemption echoed through the canyons, reminding everyone who visited that the past is never truly gone. It lives on in the stories we tell and the memories we cherish. And so, the legends of the warriors and their quest for justice became a source of inspiration for many. The souls of the fallen were no longer trapped in sorrow. Instead, they were celebrated, their stories woven into the rich tapestry of Texas history. As long as the tales of Palo Duro Canyon were told, the spirits of the Comanche warriors would remain, watching over the land they loved, eternally honored and forever at peace. Continue to the fifth story. The Souls of the Baker Hotel. Nestled in the quaint town of Mineral Wells, Texas, the Baker Hotel stands as a grand testament to the elegance of a bygone era. Constructed in 1929, this luxurious establishment once catered to celebrities and the affluent, boasting stunning architecture and an aura of sophistication. However, beneath its opulent exterior lies a haunting history filled with tales of restless spirits that refuse to depart. Having been closed for decades, the silence enveloping the hotel only amplifies its eerie atmosphere, leaving visitors with a sense of foreboding. The most notorious of the hotel's legends revolves around a woman named Virginia, whose tragic story has become an integral part of the Baker's haunted reputation. It is said that Virginia took her own life in her hotel room after her heart was shattered by a lost love. Many who have ventured into the Baker report sightings of a figure draped in a white gown, standing forlornly by the window on the top floor. Her eyes gaze longingly into the distance, as if waiting for someone she would never see again. The paranormal investigation. On a particularly eerie night, a team of paranormal investigators decided to explore the Baker Hotel, drawn by the promise of uncovering its spectral secrets. As they approached the crumbling facade, the moon cast an otherworldly glow over the building, illuminating the faded grandeur of its architecture. With their equipment in tow and an air of excitement mixed with apprehension, they entered the darkened lobby, the creak of the wooden doors echoing through the vast space. The only sound that accompanied them was the echo of their footsteps as they ventured further into the heart of the hotel. Dust motes danced in the beams of their flashlights, and the air felt thick with anticipation. As they ascended the grand staircase, memories of the past seemed to linger in the dimly lit hallways, whispering secrets of the hotel's glorious days long gone. Upon reaching the top floor, a sudden chill enveloped them, causing their skin to prickle. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the very walls were alive with the energy of the souls trapped within. One investigator, Sarah, noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of the hallway. With a sense of dread mixed with curiosity, she pushed the door open. A heart-wrenching encounter. Inside the room, they found a young woman standing motionless by the window. Her long, flowing dress billowed softly as if caressed by an unseen breeze. Virginia's shoulders trembled slightly, and the team could see tears glistening on her cheeks. For a moment, time stood still as Sarah and the others locked eyes with her, feeling an overwhelming wave of sorrow emanating from her. "Are you okay?" Sarah whispered, but as she spoke, Virginia turned to face them. Her expression was a mixture of profound sadness and despair, her eyes pools of endless sorrow. It was as if the young woman was trapped in a moment of deep grief, yearning for a lost love that had been cruelly snatched away. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, Virginia vanished. One moment she was there, and the next, she dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind an empty room that felt even colder than before. The investigators stood frozen, grappling with the reality of what they had just witnessed. Echoes of the past. Stunned by the encounter, they slowly made their way back down the corridor, their hearts racing. As they exited the hotel, a faint, hollow laugh echoed from the upper floors, an unsettling sound that sent chills down their spines. It was a laugh devoid of warmth, resonating with the agony of a soul trapped between two worlds. "Did you hear that, Jake?" one of the investigators asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The group exchanged nervous glances, the weight of the night's events sinking in. They climbed into their vehicle, feeling the oppressive presence of the hotel still lingering in their minds. As they drove away, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The last glimpse of the Baker Hotel in the rearview mirror showed its imposing structure, silhouetted against the night sky, a reminder of the spirits that roamed its halls. The legend lives on. Days turned into weeks, but the haunting images of Virginia and the mysterious laughter lingered in their thoughts. Determined to learn more about the tragic history of the hotel, the team began conducting research. They combed through old newspapers, uncovering stories of the hotel's glamorous past and the dark events that unfolded within its walls. One article detailed Virginia's life, revealing that she had been a talented actress, adored by many. Her relationship with a prominent businessman had seemed promising, but after a brutal breakup, she spiraled into despair. The investigation revealed that her death had gone largely unnoticed, a footnote in the annals of the hotel's history. Fueled by compassion for Virginia's plight, the team decided they would return to the Baker Hotel, not only to document their findings but to try and help her find peace. They believed that if they could uncover the truth behind her tragic end, it might allow her spirit to finally rest. A second visit. On the night of their return, the atmosphere felt charged with anticipation. Armed with new equipment and a sense of purpose, they once again crossed the threshold of the Baker Hotel. The lobby, once filled with elegance, now felt more like a crypt, each step resonating with echoes of the past. As they made their way to the top floor, the air grew colder, and the familiar tension returned. They entered the room where they had first encountered Virginia, feeling a strong presence in the air. Sarah set up a voice recorder, hoping to capture any messages the spirit might have. "Virginia, if you're here, we want to help you." She spoke softly into the stillness. "Can you tell us what happened?" Silence enveloped them, and for a moment, it felt as if the world had stopped. Then, just as hope began to wane, the temperature dropped dramatically. The group huddled together, watching in awe as a faint glow began to illuminate the room. The light of truth. The light gradually intensified, revealing the ghostly figure of Virginia standing before them. Her expression softer this time. "Help me find him," she pleaded, her voice trembling with emotion. "I cannot rest without him." Heart racing, Sarah asked, "Who are you looking for? We can help you." "Robert," Virginia replied, tears streaming down her face. "He was my love. I was wronged, and now I am trapped here. I need to find him." With newfound determination, the investigators promised to uncover the truth about Robert's fate. As they delved deeper into their research, they discovered that Robert had also met an untimely death, one shrouded in mystery. The couple's tragic love story was marked by jealousy, betrayal, and violence. Restoring peace. Armed with this knowledge, the team returned to the hotel for one last time. They gathered in the room where Virginia had appeared, prepared to honor her memory and help her find closure. "We know what happened to Robert," Jake began, "and we want to help you both find peace." The air crackled with energy as Virginia's spirit began to materialize before them. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with gratitude. "I can finally let go." As the light around her intensified, a sense of tranquility enveloped the room. The investigators watched in awe as Virginia's spirit faded into the light. A serene smile gracing her lips. They felt a warmth wash over them, a sign that she had finally found her way to Robert. A lasting legacy. With the mysteries solved and the spirits at peace, the Baker Hotel transformed once again. The stories of Virginia and Robert became part of the hotel's lore. Celebrated rather than feared, visitors who came to the hotel now spoke of feeling a sense of calm and joy rather than dread. And the once haunted halls became a testament to love, loss, and the power of closure. As the sun set behind the Baker Hotel, its silhouette against the vibrant Texas sky stood not just as a reminder of the past but also as a beacon of hope for all the lost souls who longed for peace. The legend of Virginia and Robert would live on, a beautiful tale of love that transcended even the boundaries of life and death. And as long as the stories were told, their spirits would forever be honored in the heart of Mineral Wells. Continue to the sixth story. The haunting of Demons Road, the Church of Shadows. Deep in the heart of Texas lies a place that even the bravest dare not approach after sundown. It's known by the locals as Demons Road, a sinister stretch of desolate pavement leading into the dark woods near Huntsville. Those who travel it often speak in hushed whispers about eerie lights, disembodied voices, and strange apparitions lurking in the night. But the true terror of Demons Road lies at its end, a crumbling, forsaken building known simply as the Church of Shadows. The legend of the Church of Shadows. Once a place of worship, the Church of Shadows is now nothing more than a hollow shell. Its roof, partially collapsed, leaves gaping holes open to the starless sky above, and the pews, rotting and covered in mold, creak ominously even when no one is around. According to the stories passed down by the locals, the church was abandoned decades ago after it was taken over by a dark cult, infamous for performing blood rituals and human sacrifices. The cultists, obsessed with summoning demonic forces, were rumored to have conducted their rituals at midnight, offering blood to the spirits they called upon. As the story goes, one of these rituals went horribly wrong. A powerful entity was unleashed, devouring the souls of the cultists and cursing the church for eternity. The entity, they say, still wanders the church, and any who dare to enter its desecrated walls will feel its presence. The encounter. It was on a chilly October night when four friends, Jake, Emma, Matt, and Lisa, decided to venture down Demons Road. They were avid fans of ghost stories and the supernatural, always looking for the next thrill. When they first heard about the Church of Shadows, they knew they had to see it for themselves. "Come on, it's probably just an old building," Jake said as they piled into his truck. He was the skeptic of the group, always looking to debunk local legends. But Matt, who sat beside him in the front seat, glanced nervously at the road ahead. "You haven't heard what people say, Jake. It's not just a building, it's evil. People disappear there," Matt muttered. Lisa, sitting in the back with Emma, rolled her eyes. You always get freaked out. Matt, it's just a story. Besides, we'll just take a quick look. And if it's too creepy, we can leave. Right, Emma? Emma nodded but stayed silent, staring out the window at the tall, gnarled trees that lined the road. There was something unsettling about the way their twisted branches seemed to reach for the truck as they drove deeper into the darkness. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the end of Demon's Road. The truck's headlights illuminated the decaying facade of the old church, its cracked stone walls covered in ivy and creeping vines. The air turned noticeably colder as Jake parked the truck, and a thick fog began to swirl around them, obscuring the lower half of the church. "Let's go," Jake said, hopping out. The others followed hesitantly. The ground beneath their feet felt uneven, almost as if something was shifting just beneath the surface. As they approached the entrance, Matt hesitated. "Guys, are we really going in there?" His voice was barely a whisper. Jake smirked. "What's the matter? Scared of a few shadows?" Inside the church, they stepped through the crumbling doorway, and an immediate chill ran through their bodies. It was as if they had crossed into another world, one devoid of warmth and light. The interior of the church was shrouded in darkness, the only illumination coming from their flashlights, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. The walls were lined with faded, illegible inscriptions, some smeared with what looked like dried blood. The pews were in disarray, broken and upturned, as if something violent had occurred there. A rotting altar stood at the far end of the hall, draped in a tattered cloth. But it was the silence that unnerved them the most, a silence so profound it pressed against their ears, making their own breaths sound like thunderous roars. They split up to explore, their voices low and wary. "Guys, I think I see something," Emma whispered suddenly. Her flashlight focused on one of the pews. She moved closer, and the others followed, peering over her shoulder. "What is it?" Lisa asked, her voice tight with fear. Emma pointed. Carved into the wood, with deep, jagged strokes, were the words, "Leave now or join us forever." A nervous laugh escaped Jake. "Probably just some prank by teenagers. I bet." A loud bang echoed through the church, cutting him off. They all spun around, flashlights darting wildly. There, at the end of the aisle, a shadow shifted, a tall, indistinct figure standing completely still. Its shape was barely visible, but they could see its eyes, glowing red pinpricks that seemed to burn into their very souls. "Run!" Matt shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the darkness. The figure began to move, slowly at first, then faster, its limbs stretching unnaturally long as it glided toward them. Panic surged through the group. They turned and sprinted for the entrance, their flashlights bobbing wildly, but the doors they had entered through were now shut tight. Jake threw his shoulder against the wood, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked," he shouted. "Look," Emma cried, pointing to the windows. More shadows were gathering outside, pressing their faces against the cracked glass, eyes gleaming, their twisted hands scraped against the panes, creating a horrible, grating noise. "Escape from the church. We have to find another way out," Lisa screamed. They ran deeper into the church, hearts pounding, the shadows closing in around them. Suddenly, Lisa tripped over something, a corpse, half buried in the debris. Its empty eye sockets stared up at her, mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. "Go, go!" Jake pulled her up, and they stumbled forward, finally spotting a narrow stairway leading down into a dark basement. With no other choice, they descended, the air growing colder and thicker as they went. The basement was a maze of narrow corridors, walls dripping with moisture. The scent of decay was overwhelming. But it was the whispers that sent chills down their spines, voices murmuring just out of reach, calling their names. "Jake, Emma, stay with us. Keep moving," Jake urged, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They burst into a small room at the end of the corridor, where a rusty metal door stood slightly ajar. With a final push, they threw it open and scrambled out into the night air. Gasping and trembling, they had escaped the church. But as they turned to look back, the shadows were there, standing in the doorway, watching them. The aftermath. They drove away as fast as they could. But even as they left Demon's Road behind, the fear lingered. When they looked in the rearview mirror, they could still see the red eyes glinting in the dark, following them. They never spoke of that night again. But the Church of Shadows remained, waiting for the next group of foolish thrill-seekers to enter its cursed halls. For those who dare to venture to Demon's Road, remember, the shadows are watching, and they're always hungry. Those were the 6 most cursed and haunted places in Texas, each with its own chilling story and dark history. Whether it's the restless spirits trapped within Falkenstein Castle, the cursed grounds of Palo Duro Canyon, or the eerie presence at the Baker Hotel, these places remind us that sometimes, the past never truly stays buried. If you ever find yourself in Texas, would you be brave enough to visit any of these haunted sites? Or maybe you already have? Let us know in the comments below if you've experienced any paranormal activity or have your own terrifying tales to share. And remember, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our future explorations into the world's most haunted and mysterious places. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious and stay brave.